Militarily Speaking, Episode 41, Military Officers Association of America. But we'll have to condense that to MOAA, right?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. This episode, we talk with Lila Quintiliani, Program Director, Financial and Benefits Education for MOAA.
Welcome to Militarily Speaking, brought to you by Armed Forces Bank. This is Tom McLean and Jodi Vickery. I'm the Regional Military Executive for Armed Forces Bank, and Jodi is the Executive Vice President, Director of Military Consumer Lending.
Yes, good morning. Again, welcome to our show. We're excited to have you listening and learning about our guest, Lila, with Military Officers Association of America. And I want to take just a few minutes, Lila, and share some of your bio with our listeners so that they know a little bit about you like we've come to learn. As MOAA's Program Director, Financial and Benefits Education Counseling, Lila develops and manages MOAA's financial and benefits counseling, education, consumer advice, staff consultant, and training programs. She provides members personalized, comprehensive, timely, and appropriate financial advice and military and veterans benefits information assistance. She also conducts off-site classes and presentations to educate audiences in financial topics such as investments, retirement planning, risk management, insurance, savings program, credit issues, the list is long, Tom.
I know.
Taxes, estate planning, consumer awareness, survivor issues, and military veterans corporate benefit programs. She serves as the staff subject matter expert on financial and benefits matters to support MOAA's legislative, marketing, and member product service efforts, and provides financial and benefit content for MOAA's print and electronic publications and multimedia channels.
Could you summarize that for me?
She's very smart, is what that, what that tells me on a lot of stuff.
and we did get a little bit. Lila sent me another bio, and this was taken off of her website, but a couple more things about her education.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to share that. So Lila carries a couple of certifications, is that the Chartered Financial Consultant and the AFC. She's a former Army Military Intelligence Officer as well as the spouse of an active duty service member. So thank you for your service and your service now as a military spouse. Prior to coming to MOAA as Program Director for Financial and Benefits Education Counseling, she worked for over a decade at military installations, both in the United States and overseas, as a personal financial counselor. Most recently, she served as Senior Program Manager for the nonprofit-sponsored Military Saves Program. We're very familiar with them.
We are.
Which seeks to encourage the military and veteran communities to build wealth and reduce debt, both good things. Lila holds a bachelor's degree in East Asian Studies from Columbia University and a master's degree in history from UCLA. She is a chartered financial consultant as well as an accredited financial counselor.
So
I told you, very smart.
And so I feel inadequate now because of all that.
My work here is done then. Good job, Lila. It's
almost like she drove into work today to Virginia, and she can go home now because what she'd accomplished and what you read.
She probably did more before like 8 her time than you're going to do all week
She actually doesn't have to start working again until probably November 8th?
2027. Yeah. Yeah, so welcome, Lila. It's an honor to have you on our show, and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to appear.
It's wonderful to have you. Let's start, if you would, just tell our audience a little bit about Military Officers Association of America, and in the event they're not familiar, MOAA.
Yeah.
Well, for those who are not familiar with our organization, we are primarily a nonprofit, nonpartisan legislative advocacy organization. I don't work on the government relations side of things, but that's primarily what our organization does. We have 10 registered lobbyists that go up on Capitol Hill to advocate for pay and benefits for our entire military and retiree, active duty, the entire military community. So that's our primary focus. And our CEO likes to say that we're an organization of officers, but we're not an organization for officers. So we legislate for everybody. And that's really what we do. And I'm one of 2 finance and benefit counselors, and I do the things that that big long laundry list that you read.
You do a lot, apparently. Yes. Yes.
So,
it's no wonder you have so much to do. There's only 2 of you doing this?
Yeah, there's 2 of us, and we have over 360,000 members. So we're the 4th largest military service organization.
Well, and all of those topics are so important and combined collectively so important for military families, I think. And if you can help them navigate the benefits maze, then, that in of itself, I'm sure, is a full-time job and then some.
Is it true you've been around since 1929?
Like Lila? Or
well, not Lila.
Yeah, I had a pause there, but
I know, it sounded kind of weird,
I guess I'll have to ask my question over again, but yeah. Is that true?
Did you put me on the spot? I know it was having an anniversary. I don't know. Let me see.
He has a terrible way of doing that, Lila.
I know, Lila, just tell me to back off.
Yeah, I'll have to look up the founding year.
Everything on the internet is true, so we'll just go with that, okay? So let's go back to Lila personally. And you graduated from Columbia University. Again, these are great accolades for you. You have the distinction of being a chartered financial consultant, accredited financial counselor. You have more than a decade of experience providing training in financial education on a personal level and in group settings. You have a master's from UCLA. The East Asian Studies, Chinese history, I'd say that you have the qualifications to provide guidance on financial matters. But on a side note, why the interest in foreign languages and history? My brother was a history major. Is there something that you want to tell our audience about you?
Well, I've always loved travel. That's a big constant in my life. I'm always planning my next trip. I've been to 54 countries. So
wow.
I'm constantly trying to add to that list. So I've always been interested in other cultures, always interested in travel. When I went to college, I grew up in Miami, so there wasn't a lot of exposure to Asian culture. And when I went to college, I was just fascinated. So I started out going in that direction and then kind of changed course and went into the military. And then got interested in financial stuff and financial education kind of later in life. But, it all kind of flows together, in a strange way.
Kind of found her way.
That's pretty impressive, 54 countries.
Yeah, my daughter is now up to, I think, 4 or 5 countries, and she's gone to like Ghana and Costa Rica and places, just more on the personal level, even though she went to Ghana to study turtles in school. But I think she has that same kind of DNA you have about wanting to just figure out what's important to her and make sure she does it. She's
been to more countries than I've been to states. And by default, that will always be true since there are only 50 states.
You're still coffee deprived, aren't you?
I've had no coffee.
So thank you for sharing that little behind the scenes for you, Lila. But MOAA has a long legacy of fighting hard to preserve the benefits and resources available to military members. So just from your perspective, Lila, what's it mean to be a member of MOAA?
Well, MOAA's motto is never stop serving. And I do think that really describes what it is to be a member, is trying to take care of the entire military community, especially advocating for active duty and guard and reserve, because they really can't advocate for themselves. So,
right.
You want to take care of others. And the best way to do that is by making sure that they and their families have their pay and benefits taken care of.
Well, I love that you've clarified that MOAA is not just about serving the needs of the officer corps. So as you look at the 10-point agenda that I won't run through here, but...
Can you want to run through all 10 points?
No.
Okay.
Lila's welcome to do that. I'm sure there are so many issues that you could focus on and you could tackle. How do you go about kind of whittling that down to here are the 10 most impactful to that broad group of military members, veterans, Guard Reserve, active duty, you name it? How do you pick the 10? That seems like almost an impossible task.
Yeah, I mean, our government relations team, they have a database where, they are tracking issues. They have analysts that work and kind of narrow down the issues. And then we have our board. We have a 36-member board. They focus the team on particular issues. And we have a long, long list of priorities. But we know that each year there's probably only 2 or 3 that we can focus on and really try to get attention on them. And if there's legislation involved, try to get that legislation passed. Some of our issues take decades for us to pass, things like, the widow's tax, the repeal of the SBP DIC offset, things like concurrent receipt. And then we're still fighting for complete concurrent receipt. And some of these issues just take decades and decades and decades. So you have to narrow it down. And then each year we pick 2 to 3 issues that we particularly focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would have to think that the whole environment around politics and all of the things that go with that we won't dive off into affect what you guys perceive as the ability to get certain topics through based on a bunch of noise that's probably circulating.
Right. And it's always difficult when there's a cost involved. It's always going to be difficult to get these issues passed, which is why we sometimes have incremental progress, like on the concurrent receipt issue, incremental progress. And then, we try to get it across the final line. Another thing that an issue is on military pay. We've had some progress on that. Before 9/11, we were over 13% behind in our pay as compared to our civilian counterparts. We've been closing the gap, but, we still are about 2.6% behind our civilian counterparts. And that's something that we're really looking closely at because this is the 50th anniversary of the all-volunteer force. We want to keep it that way, an all-volunteer force, and we need to compensate. We're in a very tough recruiting environment where we're competing for, the top percentage of 17 to 24-year-olds, and we can't keep paying them wages from a decade ago. So we need to, that is one of our focuses. Our major focuses this year has been the preservation of the all-volunteer force.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, thanks for fighting the fight. Nothing's easy and nothing is done quickly, especially when you're involved with legislative moves up there. So let's get down to the nitty gritty, right? How does one officially become a member of MOAA? And are there qualifications to be part of MOAA? And if you don't fit the qualifications, are there still ways for people to support MOAA on the outside looking in? But is there any formality around MOAA membership?
Yes, you have to be a commissioned officer from one of the uniformed services, which includes not just, Army, Air Force, Marine, Navy, Space Force, but also U.S. Public Health Service, Coast Guard, and NOAA. So they all could be members. Surviving spouses of a member can also kind of inherit that membership. But otherwise, the membership itself is not open to those who weren't a commissioned officer. The best way to support, I believe, would be using our Legislative Action Center, which is an online portal where you can see all of our various issues, where they stand in Congress, everything, we support and with explanations on it. And then there are templated letters to congressional representatives, and you can use that to send letters to your elected officials. And that's what we encourage everyone to do. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to be an officer. You just have to have that issue speak to you, and you go into our Legislative Action Center and use that to contact. And you don't have to use a template, but it just makes it easy. You can just kind of click a button and push.
Plug and play.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can modify it and send it, however you want. But that's how we would tell people to get involved, would be to contact if any of our issues, speak to them on a personal level, to contact their elected representatives.
But all this can be found, Lila, at www.moaa.org?
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Right. You can navigate from there to, we have a tab on advocacy, and you can get to the Legislative Action Center that way. But yes, they're all found on our main webpage.
I remember doing advocacy work for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, for a decade, and we asked that of everybody as well that touched them on a personal level or on a professional level, and we had those templated letters that could be sent. So I appreciate you making it easy for folks to participate and provide that kind of support.
And that does help, because sometimes people don't know what to say, right? But they're happy to send.
And I also think people sometimes tend to feel like, oh, it's not going to matter if I do that. But we assure them that their voice does matter. Their elected representatives do track the contacts that are made to their office. So it is important. Your voice can matter.
Very much so. Very much so. So we'll share that website again as we move through the podcast today. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your specific responsibilities, Lila. I'm very curious about what are you seeing right now? I mean, everybody knows sort of the economic climate we're in and how that impacts people and maybe military families even in more unique, different ways. What are you seeing when it comes to the demand for education in certain areas? What do you find are maybe the most pressing needs for, and if they're different by active duty versus veteran or, just families in general? What are you seeing the most questions about or the interest in?
I would say it really differs depending on age group and demographic, like you were saying. I think the younger active duty folks are really concerned about the day-to-day, getting by day-to-day. They're concerned with, their BAH. That was another issue of ours this year, was that the fact that MOAA believes that 100% coverage for BAH needs to be restored. I think about 75% of active duty families are paying about $200 or more out of pocket over their BAH, because not only was BAH reduced down to 95% instead of trying to cover 100% of housing costs, but also it does not respond well to the chaotic housing market right now. And in a lot of areas, it's very difficult to find affordable housing. So I would say active duty folks, these are the issues that are occupying them, because spouse unemployment, housing issues, these are the things that are consuming them. And also, saving for retirement, those kind of things, saving for their children's education. That's also very important. As folks are moving closer to getting out of the military, then they're worried about that transition stage. And I actually work as part of the transition team. So I do finance and benefit stuff, but my colleagues, they do more of like the career type things. So we have that as well. We offer lots of webinars and other services for everybody, not just officers. We have a lot of free resources that are open to all members and service members, veterans and spouses. So we focus on that transition time frame. And then as folks get older, they do become more concerned about benefits, health care. That's a big thing that we do a lot of education on. Now you're looking more at you've saved for retirement. Now you're trying to figure out the best way to start withdrawing from your retirement savings. And that's pretty complicated as well. And also, Social Security, Medicare, all these kinds of things. So I see kind of an ebb and flow of issues depending on the age group.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. I mean, that's what we see as a bank. People coming to us, it's based on kind of their stage in life and what's going on in their world. When you help people through that transition period, are you sharing with them because I know when my husband retired, I sort of felt like maybe he got information before I did and just didn't tell me, which is entirely possible. But I felt like we were making some decisions kind of right there on the fly, on the spot, without maybe full knowledge. And as I look back several years later, I think knowing what I know now and learned, I probably would have made some different choices. So are you helping them kind of in that moment make good choices?
We're trying to, and we do, some of the local installations, we do actually go out and give briefings on benefits, on healthcare, on, survivor benefit plan, et cetera. And I do think you're right that people are making decisions in a very compressed time frame when it's very hard for them to know, to make an informed choice. And I especially see that with our Guard and Reserve folks. Unfortunately, a lot of times they are not as well prepared just because of the nature of their service. And they a lot of things about Guard and Reserve are different, and people don't know how to talk to them. So we try to help where we can, because yes, you're right. I think there are these key points in one's military career where all these decisions need to be made, and sometimes folks are not really ready for that. So,
and some of those choices you can't undo later. Like you decide and it's done, and you can't go back, 6 years later and say, just kidding. I really do want that coverage.
Yeah, the survivor benefit plan, which is why we've been putting out a lot of information on the open season this year. The survivor benefit plan has an open season until the end of this year. So we've tried to put out a lot of information on that.
You mentioned doing briefings at military installations, right? That is there a schedule or an installation of choice that you've got on a calendar that says we're going to be there talking about this particular topic, or is it random?
No, I mean, we are on a schedule with some of the local ones, but we also do virtual webinars every month
Okay.
on different topics. I invited the folks from the Social Security Administration to come speak last month. Next month is on charitable giving. So we have different topics that everyone is welcome. You don't have to be a member. They're virtual. So you can sign up, and even if you can't be there, they'll send you the link to the webinar after the fact. So we try to do things on different, so some we do in person. That's mostly just in the Northern Virginia, the capital region, that we do those kind of briefings. But then we also do a lot of virtual things. We have virtual classrooms that folks can sign up for. You don't have to be a member, but sometimes if you're not a member with some of those, there might be a nominal cost. But there's a lot of free stuff that we do as well, those monthly webinars on pay and benefits.
They can find out though more at MOAA.org.
Yes, we have a tab, an events tab, and we try to do 1 to 2 finance and benefits webinars a month. And then the other more career transition folks also do 1 to 2 a month. So on any given month, we might have something on, Social Security, the open season for signing up for TRICARE, interview skills, resume writing. We do all kinds of stuff like that.
Wow. Does MOAA have like a newsletter of sorts where people can actually go to the website, sign up, and get a recurring newsletter?
Yes, we have a newsletter that anyone can get, and you can sign up. And depending on your interests, I believe, maybe I better find out, but I do think it depends on your what you signify as your interests, how exactly the newsletter looks. I'm not 100% sure of that because I'm not on the comms team, but
we'll let them peruse your site and find out.
That's their homework assignment.
Yeah, and you can sign up for our electronic newsletter that comes out each week, and then members do receive our award-winning magazine, the Military Officer Magazine. So
she put a plug in there about award-winning, right?
I like that. I would too.
I would too.
It's a good publication. We get a lot of our members read that from cover to cover.
When you go to your website, it says we protect the earned benefits of all service members. We improve the lives of those who served. Together, we have more influence in Congress. And I think there's a lot of truth to that statement, too, that there are here it is, Jodi, a plethora of issues facing our military. There's not enough time or resources to address all of them. So I think we've danced around this a little bit during our conversation, but that 10-point agenda became, well, what are the really most important? Well, there's 2 or 3 that are really pressing. But if something were to just come your way out of left field, does that then become a priority for you? This is the government relations side of the house, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, when our members have things that they, think are very important or whatever, we do communicate them. The finance and benefits counselors do communicate them to our government relations team. And, I'm sure that they add them, they look into those issues and see if they're worthy of adding to the list of priorities. But really, there are really so many different priorities, and it's guided by the board and by the research that the government relations team does. And I also should say that we don't work alone on issues. We're part of the Military Coalition, which is 35 organizations like, Wounded Warrior, Blue Star Families, and MFA, all of these kind of organizations. We don't always agree with them. MOAA is the permanent co-chair of the Military Coalition, but we do come together with them, and that makes us a more powerful voice on Capitol Hill. So it's always best when we have issues that our other organizations in the Military Coalition, if they are also interested in those issues, that then it's easier to kind of move the needle on the dial.
Bigger voice, right? More organizations. Yeah.
I'm sure that as you've done education yourself, again, shifting gears just a little bit, or I've seen in cases where an organization is advocating for a specific type of legislation, that sometimes we use stories of individuals that have been affected by the lack of benefit or the lack of coverage in an area. Are there any stories like that you could share with our audience to sort of put a personal spin on the good work that you're doing, whether they're folks you've encountered through your educational efforts or ones you've seen MOAA highlight as part of the human side of pushing for legislative change?
I would say the ones that I personally see are a lot of times we have surviving spouses that haven't been prepared very well, let's say, for their spouse's passing. So it kind of, they kind of are in shock and don't know what to do. And we try to always help them. We have publications that can help them kind of navigate the next steps. We have a checklist that we send out. And so we do pretty frequently help surviving spouses. Those are people that I speak to, and my colleague does as well. We also, I know that, and this is not something I directly interact with. I should have mentioned it before, but we have 2 subsidiary foundations that MOAA, MOAA is, as I said, a nonprofit, nonpartisan legislative advocacy organization. But then we have 2 foundations, the Scholarship Fund, which gives scholarships to both officers and enlisted, and has given over $160 million
Wow.
in educational assistance to more than 16,000 students over the years through interest-free loans and grants, a mix of both. And they're supposed to disperse about $3.6 million this year. And they are always looking for more families to give to, especially enlisted families. And that's something that we always try to put out. So there's that. But then there's also the Crisis Relief Fund. And my colleagues at the MOAA Foundation, they sent me some information right before the AMBA workshop about how the most recent grants that the Crisis Relief Fund had given were all to 100% to enlisted or connected to enlisted individuals. And 100% of applicants said they would recommend the program. The average income of folks that we were giving these crisis relief grants to the average income was $29,000. So these are people that are really, in need, and we try to give them grants.
It's definitely clear that you're putting the money where it could be most used and most probably valuable to those families, given the limited kind of discretionary income that's probably available to deal with a crisis or something else unexpected going on in life. I was struck as we were talking about stories and listening to you talk about that. We've had, I think, been blessed to meet military spouses by virtue of doing this podcast. And so many of them find themselves helping organizations like yours advocate for important legislation. And to a person, they're like, I never thought I would see myself doing something like this, but they care so deeply about this community that they're willing to kind of get in the fight, put themselves out of their comfort zone, and share their stories.
Reminds me of that Love Lives On, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Lila brought up, though, a couple things. Like she said, the 2 different funds that they have out there. I don't know if I would have even known that. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience, Lila.
Definitely.
By the time this podcast gets published, there will have been a decision probably in D.C. about the shutdown that's coming up, government shutdown, but slated for the 30th September. But, going forward, this will always be a battle, I think, on Capitol Hill over government shutdown or not. And just because it's this fiscal year, it may happen the next fiscal year and 10 fiscal years from now. Is there any advice or any guidance or any recommendations from a financial education or literacy or preparedness standpoint that you want to provide to our audience that can get them ready for something like that? I think we take it for granted that Saturday morning they'll get it resolved and we'll move on to live another day. But, it could also become a reality, right, Lila?
Oh, for sure. I mean, each year for the past 27 years has started under either a continuing resolution or a shutdown, so we've had this is not really new. And I would say that, the same, it's kind of evergreen advice that you should always be ready for this, because unfortunately it's kind of the way things are right now. I actually just recently wrote an article for our newsletter on this topic, and I really think it's important for folks to have an emergency fund, because this is exactly, the kind of thing that can very quickly turn into an emergency. We saw that a few years ago when the Coast Guard folks did not get paid during a shutdown. And I always tell folks that it's a good time when you think you're facing a change in income, whether it's from a government shutdown or from a job loss or whatever it is, whatever source of reason for income loss, you should definitely triage your expenses and figure out which ones are the most expensive, because obviously having, shelter over your head, food to eat, and, a car to get to work, those are very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you need to figure those out, and then definitely cut back on all non-essential expenses. And, I don't just mean not eating out and not getting a latte or something. I mean, like,
she's speaking my love language.
I know,
right now.
especially now.
I mean, temporarily halting contributions to your retirement fund, or if you're making, aggressive debt repayments, like I've seen a lot of folks want to, they get all fired up about paying down all their debt or things like that. I think if you really are facing, don't know that the next paycheck is coming in, then you just kind of have to put the brakes on that. Just pay the minimums on everything so that you're not wrecking your credit history or having your car repossessed or whatever it is. But
good point.
You need to cut back on that. But I would say that the thing I see folks having the most struggles with in these kind of situations is actually spending their rainy day fund, their emergency fund, because we kind of have like a psychological block against doing that,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
People don't want to touch it. And I've seen people get into debt, not because they didn't want to touch their emergency fund, but that's exactly what it's for. So I would encourage folks that if they don't get paid, that this is the emergency you've been waiting for. So you need to tap into that. And also to know where you can get help. A lot of folks don't realize that all the aid societies have lots of resources, even for retirees and for activated guard and reserve. They do have resources that sometimes people, go to nefarious places to get money when they could have gone to one of the aid societies, or even talk to their creditors, talk to their banks, ask and see if they have any resources. So those would be the two big things that I think people don't always know where they can look, and they can always go to. Even retirees can go to the military installation and get help from the Family Readiness Center. They don't know to do that, and they don't know, what's out there. And they also are afraid to actually use their emergency fund.
Did you put all that information in that article that you recently published about resources like that we sometimes either take for granted or don't know what they can do for?
Yeah, I did. I wrote an article, and there are with the links to the National Resource Directory, but also to Military One Source and other places where you can find all this information. The aid societies, yes.
Good deal. So as we wind down, Lila, anything else you want to share that we might not have covered? You brought up some hidden gems for our audience, but is there something else on your way into work or now that you want to talk about with our audience?
I think I slid the foundations in there. I had kind of...
You did very well. Yes.
I kind of neglected them when I first was describing it, and I just wanted to, really bring that a lot of people don't realize that we have those two programs, and they're great. Whether it's, applying to be a recipient of them, or they're a good place to donate to if you are so inclined.
Very good. Thanks for the good work you and your organization are doing, Lila.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that we've kept you for a while this morning, but we'd ask you to hang out with us for just a couple more minutes.
Is it time?
We want to play the Military Minute. We're not going to put you on the spot, Lila. So last week's Military Minute was a question about our guest from Heart of America Patriot Foundation, and it was something that was said during the podcast, I think at least twice. So the question was, how many partner schools currently support Heart of America Patriot Foundation?
I know the answer.
You do, because you wrote it down. You were there. But the answer is 31. So if you posted that answer and it was correct on our podcast drop for the Heart of America Patriot Foundation, watch for your name to be also posted for the opportunity to receive $50 for yourself and $50 for a charity of your choice. And this week's Military Minute, it feels like we're going a little pop culture this week, which doesn't surprise me.
Because I was involved?
Because Tom was involved. So this week's Military Minute takes us to a question on the topic of streaming shows. What Netflix show has been streamed the most of all time by both hours watched and views? Nobody answer. If you do know the answer, though, when we drop this podcast, I've never even heard of this answer. Like, it's bizarre, and I don't want you really to tell me about it. But if you are like Tom and you do Netflix and you know the answer, when we drop this podcast, enter your best guess, and you'll also have the chance to earn $50 for yourself and $50 for a charity of your choice.
Do you know by not knowing or seeing this particular show, you've left a void in your life?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we digress. Thank you again, Lila, for spending time with us this morning on a rainy morning where you're at, it sounded like. But we're glad that you were here, and it was great to have you share with our audience all about MOAA and the good work that you're doing and the other foundations that you shared about.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, go out to afbank.com, subscribe to the show like Lila did. Also, make sure to rate us, leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple, Spotify, and now available on YouTube. So there's no excuse for not finding it. If you're not an Apple or a Spotify subscriber, you can actually go to YouTube. So Lila, thank you again. And that time of the year where things are really hopping up in DC, and we're looking forward to the next year when we know what's ahead of us or don't know.
Right.
Lila, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Copyright 2022 Armed Forces Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. All non-Armed Forces Bank owned apps, websites, company names, and product names are trademarks or registered trademarks of their respective owners. Their mention does not imply any affiliation with or endorsement by Armed Forces Bank of them or their products and services. They are merely used as examples of the many available apps, companies, and websites that offer similar services. Before using any app or website, you should carefully review the terms of use, data collection, and privacy policy. Apps may have an initial cost or in-application purchase features. This information is general in nature and is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Although Armed Forces Bank believes this information to be accurate, it cannot ensure that it could change. Statements or opinions of individuals referenced herein are their own, not Armed Forces Bank. Consult an appropriate professional concerning your specific situation and respective governing bodies for applicable laws, such as IRS.gov for current tax law. Armed Forces Bank, the Armed Forces Bank logo, and the Militarily Speaking logo are registered trademarks of Armed Forces Bank.